You're listening to Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists. This is episode 22, released on the 14th of May, 2018. Welcome to Chasing the Horizon, a podcast by, for, and about motorcyclists, brought to you by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Subscribe in iTunes or stream from the website at horizon.bmwmoa.org. My name is Wes Fleming. Thanks for joining us. You know I like to kick off with Royal Enfield news, but I want to start the news with something else this time. Be patient, we'll get to Royal Enfield soon enough. Curtis Motorcycles is one of the newest U.S.-based manufacturers on the motorcycle scene. You may know them already, but under their previous name, Confederate Motorcycles. Confederate was known for putting out amazingly expensive, handmade motorcycles that had existed in one space, total beast mode. There's been a huge change with the company, and it's not just changing their name from Confederate to Curtis. In addition to the name change, they've changed their focus from gasoline-powered motorcycles to electric motorcycles, and they've unveiled their first concept bike called Zeus. It looks about as crazy as their gas-powered bikes, which is to say it is also operating 100% in beast mode. Zeus has not one, but two electric motors. It also has machined billet aluminum chassis featuring bolted-on members rather than welded-on ones. The rear suspension is based on a central cantilevered monoshock, and the front end bounces on a 4-link girder monoshock. I don't even know what a girder monoshock is, but Zeus looks like something out of one of the Tron movies. The folks at the Quail Motorcycle Gathering in California must agree, because they named Zeus the most innovative motorcycle of the show. The dual electric motors put out 290 foot-pounds of torque and the equivalent of 170 horsepower. No word on the bike's range yet, but it sports a 14.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is bigger than pretty much anything on offer except for the largest packs from Zero. Right now, Curtis expects to begin production in 2019 for the 2020 model year. I can't wait to find out what a Zeus will cost. Now, speaking of electric motorcycles, let's get into Royal Enfield. I'm not entirely sure how I missed it, but back in March, Royal Enfield announced they're putting money into the development of an electric bullet. That's one of their models, by the way. The company's president, Rudratej Singh, and I apologize if I mangled your name there, bud, said, quote, "We are in an investment phase in the project. There's not much info right now beyond that, but if anybody can make an electric bike that looks like a classic motorcycle, it's going to be Royal Enfield." Eicher Motors, the parent company of Royal Enfield, announced a consolidated net profit of 462 crore rupees for their fiscal fourth quarter, which ended on March 31st. Last episode, I told you that 1 lakh is 100,000 rupees, so now you're going to learn a bit more about how to count Indian money, or people. 1 crore is 100 lakh, so 1 crore is 10 million rupees. Eicher's fourth fiscal quarter profit of 462 crore, or 462 billion rupees, is the equivalent of about $68.8 million in the U.S. 1 rupee is worth about 1.5 cents in U.S. currency. I should probably note that though this is only a marginal rise in their year-over-year quarterly profit, it does set yet another record for profit for the company. To continue boosting their bottom line, Eicher/Royal Enfield announced that they'll be building an assembly plant somewhere in Southeast Asia, most likely in Thailand, Indonesia, and or Vietnam, to drive their quest for domination of the world middleweight motorcycle market. This could be where a large portion of their stated next fiscal year expenditures of 800 crore rupees, or about 119 million US dollars, could be headed. From India to Indian, let's take a look at Polaris, the parent company of Indian Motorcycles. Back in March, Polaris and Eicher ended their collaboration that was producing a hybrid car-truck vehicle called the Multics. A Multics cost less than $4,000 and could hold 5 people, although I'm guessing at that price point it had to be 5 very small people. Since Polaris killed off Victory back in the beginning of 2017, and now this joint venture with Eicher has ended, Polaris announced that it is going to focus its business on producing Indian motorcycles and various ATVs. However, Indian Motorcycles is not currently looking to produce motorcycles in India, though it is looking at building ATVs there, where ATV use is widespread, especially among police, military, and border patrol forces. I'm kind of getting into this, so let's keep on going and check in with Harley-Davidson. The financial experts at the Motley Fool ran a scathing hit piece on Harley this week, taking the motor company to task for its $500,000 plus flat track reward budget. It's especially hurtful after Indians swept the podium at the Calistoga half mile, with Jared Meese taking the win coming off of his, not suspension, his disqualification, and two privateers taking second and third place. Remember, one of Meese's Wrecking Crew teammates, Brian Smith, is out with a broken leg. That piece in the Motley Fool could have something to do with Harley's decision to ban all media from their annual shareholder meeting, which was held on the 10th of May at the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee. In recent years, not only have media been welcome, but Harley's held the shareholder meetings on Saturdays, inviting writers and trotting out Willie G for handshakes and autographs. For 2018, though, only registered shareholders are welcome, with media and the public invited to the museum's first bike night of the year, scheduled for the evening after the shareholder meeting. It's not clear if Harley is trying to hide something, which I doubt, or merely licking their wounds after some tough news related to profit, revenues, and plant closures. A Harley spokesman said the company wouldn't be announcing anything new at the shareholder meeting, but he did not address the media ban. Okay, we're in the home stretch on the news now. I mentioned Indians' flat track sweep at Calistoga, so let's cut over to MotoGP. Minor news has two-time Moto2 champion Johan Zarco leaving his satellite Yamaha team and signing on with the Red Bull KTM team. Remember, this is KTM's first year in MotoGP. Zarco is currently second in the MotoGP standings, just 8 points behind Marc Marquez, and he'll be joining Paul Espargaro on the KTM team. Wrapping things up here, Valentino Rossi came out angry with Yamaha after a tough race in Spain last weekend. Rossi said he was lucky to finish fifth in the race and essentially blamed his bike for the off-podium finish. He said, quote, "If we want to try to fight for the podium and the victory, we have to speed up our development process." He went on to say he knows what the bike needs, but that Yamaha is soft-pedaling their support for him and his teammate, Maverick Vinales. That was a long news segment, but thanks for staying with me. It all ties together, and I ended on a racing segment because of who my guest is. The race now called the Dakar Rally got its start in 1979 as the Paris-Dakar Rally. It was an annual race from Paris, France to Dakar, Senegal. Unfortunately, poor security in some Central African countries prompted organizers to cancel the race in 2008 and subsequently move the entire rally to South America, where the threat of terror attacks against the competitors is non-existent. The race combines paved transitional stages with off-road competitive stages, and it's a brutal treatment of cars, trucks, quads, of course, motorcycles, and especially the people who operate them. In the 2018 Dakar Rally, Matthias Walkner won the motorcycle class with a time of 43 hours, 6 minutes, and 1 second. I timed this episode for the 14th of May on purpose because registration for the 2019 Dakar Rally starts tomorrow, on the 15th of May, 2018. So all you folks that think you might want to be in the rally, now's your chance to sign up. My guest on this episode finished 66th in the motorcycle division with a time of 69 hours, 46 minutes, and 13 seconds. Merely finishing a rally of this magnitude is an amazing achievement, and you're about to hear just how somebody accomplishes that feat. My guest on this episode is Bill Conger, and Bill has been in at least one, if not two. Actually, you've been in at least two, if not more, Dakar rallies. Welcome to the show, Bill. It's good to talk to you today.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So how many Dakar rallies have you done?
Two.
You did the one this year in 2018, and I think your first one was in 2012. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
So I imagine, like a lot of people, you got your start riding motorcycles relatively young. Do you remember what your very first motorcycle was that you bought or rode or anything like that?
Well, the first one I bought actually became a motorcycle owner. I was pretty old, honestly. But as far as first bike being on a motorcycle, my dad had a 1970 or 71 Honda CL 350. And he was in the military. We lived down on Camp Lejeune, and I'd jump on that thing with him, and we'd go running up and down all the tank trails and stuff on base. So that was kind of my first experience as a little kid on a bike. And then, I always wanted one. Mom wasn't into it, so never was able to actually have one as a kid. I had friends and neighbors that had bikes, and I'd jump on them and ride whenever we could. And it wasn't until I was actually out of college before I actually bought and owned my own bike.
Yeah, so you were in your probably mid-20s at that point, early 20s?
Yeah, mid-20s.
Was that a street bike or a dirt bike?
First thing was a street bike. It was a street bike. I was living out in California, working at a racing school, and I bought a Katana 600, and started riding around and hitting the canyon roads and stuff like that, and really got into that. And after about 6 months, I'm like, I need something better. So I stepped up and bought a GSXR 750.
That's a big step up.
Yeah, big leap. But it was awesome. I loved it. I was living in Ventura at the time, and so I was riding all through Santa Monica Forest, like on Mulholland and the Rock Store, and I'd go out Ojai and all the canyon roads out there and tear it up and survived, and it was good.
So how did you get into off-road riding, which is, the motorcycle is a motorcycle, but the skill set is a little bit different.
Yeah. So, serious off-roading started after I got into road racing. I got into road racing, so I was road racing bikes. And I was looking for something to do in the off season to kind of keep the skills up and kind of improve my riding and whatnot. So I bought a dirt bike and started off-road riding. And the more I got into it, the more I really, really liked it. So that kind of started it. That got the ball rolling in the dirt bikes, and just kind of went nuts from there.
Well, yeah, I'd say going from some road racing to experiencing a dirt bike to the first time to competing in what a lot of people consider the Dakar to be the ultimate off-road rally. That's a pretty interesting path. When did you first start thinking about doing something like the Dakar?
Well, it's evolution's kind of funny. I didn't really know about the Dakar when it first was happening. I didn't learn about the Dakar probably until the mid '90s or so. But what I did follow was the Camel Trophy, and that was a car event. And the old Camel Trophy, I heard about that. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to get on a team, and obviously it would have been in a car. When I learned about the Dakar and saw that, I was like, I want to do this. And my thoughts originally were all doing it in a car or a truck or something, because my background first was racing cars. And so I started, following it and be like, this would be so awesome. And then the more I got into off-road riding, I was like, wait a minute, it's more attainable this way. I love off-road riding. Let's kind of pursue that. So yeah, that's, wasn't until probably much later, 2008, 2009, 10, that range, that I started thinking that, hey, this could actually happen on a motorcycle.
So you went from thinking about it to doing it in a pretty short turnaround. It sounds like maybe only 2 or 3 years from when you first started thinking seriously about doing it on a bike to actually doing it. What was your how do you get going on the Dakar route? Because I'm guessing, actually I'm not guessing, I did a little bit of research before I called you. You didn't have a giant team behind you. You didn't have a bunch of factory support. You just kind of did it.
Yeah, so I talked to some people that have been involved in it and raced before, and just kind of did some research and tried to figure out what was the best way to go about it. I got hooked up with the guys with Rally Pan Am, who Charlie Rossio was the first guy that originated it, and started the program, and then Dave Peckham picked it up and kind of ran with it after that. And got connected with those guys. I went out west and did a training weekend with them, learning about road book navigation and riding, and that went real well. And from there, I was just like, okay, I need to commit and do it. And that's probably the biggest thing is just deciding once you commit to do it, you're in. It's you got, you commit, you follow through, and you make it happen. So that's what I tried the first time. Didn't get quite the follow through that I wanted, but I still got there. So
yeah. So what is the preparation cycle like? How far? Now, obviously, you have two different experiences. You have the experience of your first time in the rally in 2012. Couple 3 years from I think this would be cool to do to you're on the piste and you're ready to go, as opposed to the next 6 years of the process. Now you've experienced it once. First, you got to decide, am I going to do it again? Once you decide you're going to do it again, now you understand a little bit more about the preparation cycle. So this second time that you got ready for it, how far out did you start active preparation for the rally?
Well, it wasn't as far out as I would have liked, because honestly, it wasn't until May that the opportunity even existed. So, and that the opportunity kind of presented itself in a way that was like, I might actually be able to do this again. And it wasn't until mid-June that I had committed. So, I mean, we're talking 6 months.
6 months, yeah.
But the thing about that though is that I stay in pretty good shape. I ride a lot, so it's not like I was just like, oh, I need to go get in shape or learn how to ride a motorcycle or anything like that. So, but that was the turning point of let's get serious about this and make sure you're in the best physical conditioning that you can be in. And then also part of that was the different program that I was doing this time. This time I was working with a good team, small but a good team, well prepared. They were supplying the motorcycle this time, so basically I just had to show up in shape and a suitcase full of money.
Well, so but I don't want to get into your financials, but what kind of money does it take to do the rally? Like, from your perspective, obviously, if somebody shows up and says, here's your bike, go, they've already taken care of a lot of the financial aspect of it, the bike prep and all that kind of stuff. But, if somebody was to say, I'd like to, run the Dakar Rally one day, what's a bare bones minimum figure they should be thinking about?
Wow. Bare bones. I mean, this would be going Malimoto. You already have all your riding gear, and stuff. I mean, you could probably get by for $40,000.
So it's a pretty hefty financial outlay just to get in it to finish, let alone to put yourself in a position to be competitive and finish, say, in the top 10.
Oh yeah, I mean the competitive end of the field is, I mean they're on $1 million budgets.
That's crazy. Well,
what these guys are spending at the top end is unbelievable. It's such a big logistics game, and that's where the biggest expense comes from. I mean, it's not like you're going to some place and setting up shop for a weekend,
right?
Even the ASO. So the ASO handles all the transport of their stuff. They have a little mini city set up everywhere you go, the bivouac, and that's all done. Well, that has to get paid for, and it's paid for by the competitors through their entry fees.
Sure.
The good thing is, as a competitor, when you show up, you know that there's going to be showers there. May not be hot, but they got showers, and they've got food there for you. So, those are pretty important things, especially the food aspect more than anything, because we are in such remote locations and our days are so long. It's not like we have time to swing into a convenience store and stock up on groceries and continue on. So that side of it is huge there. And then the wear and tear on the bikes, the maintenance, all the stuff that goes on there, the logistics of the teams, what they have to do to get you from place to place, expenses start adding up.
Yeah.
They add up really, really quick.
Well, and
and even if I explain $40,000 sounds like a lot, but if I laid it out itemized, you kind of be like, that's all you get for that?
Right.
A $40,000 budget besides your entry and what like that, you're using the same set of tires for 3 or 4 days, which, to an average dirt rider, that's no big deal, except for, you're putting 500 miles on a set of tires a day.
Yeah. And they're hard
more,
miles.
Or more. Yeah, or more, exactly. I mean, the tires are shredded, at the end of the day. So, do they still have a little rubber on them? Sure. But are they effective? Not really.
Yeah.
So, having a budget for a new set of tires every day is good. And, that's just where some of the expenses, they just start adding up, because it's not just the tires, it's also the mousse. You got to put new mousse in every day.
Yeah.
So, before you know it, you got probably $15,000. Let me think. It's $600 a day for tires times 14 days. So what is that?
Lots.
12,000.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I can't do math that fast in my head.
Oh wait, no, because 10 would be 6, 9,000. It'd be about 9,000 just in tires. Just in tires. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's stuff. It adds up.
So I want to back up real quick, because you used a term that you understand and I understand, but a lot of people listening might not. Can you explain a little bit about what mousse is?
Yeah, so mousse are they're a foam insert that go inside the tire, so you don't have to worry about flat. So effectively, there's no air in the tire, whether it be a tubeless tire or a tube. And so if you get a puncture, it's just like sticking a needle into a sponge and pulling it back out. It has no effect. The mousse are awesome. They're great, but they do have their limitations. They get overheated, and then they break down in time. That's why you have to replace them, because once they break down, you're out of luck. There's nothing you can do to fix it other than, maybe carry a tube with you and shove it in there or something. But
right. And when you're out,
they're effectively what you need.
Yeah, when you're out in the middle of a stage, nobody can help you. I mean, another rider could stop and help you, but your team support is only at the beginning and end of the stage, correct?
Correct. Yeah. On the specials, which is the race portion, your only support is you and other competitors. So yeah, it's not like, you can pull into the pits or call your crew and have somebody come rescue you. That's one of the big differences from like Baja racing that everybody knows here in the States. Baja guys, they have chase crews. They've got their pits. They get to pick and set up their pits wherever they want, but they've got radio communication. So if something happens, they'll send a chase truck out to help them and get them back on the road. We don't have that. So you've got to have, your vehicle to where it's going to last. You need to be able to fix it and maintain it. And for motorcycles, because, we can't carry a spare, having tires that, last and mousse that don't disintegrate is crucial. The days are long enough and physically demanding enough to have to stop and fix a tire, a tube, or whatever would just it kill your day. I mean, forget the competitiveness of it, just physically and mentally and all that. If you're having to stop 2-3 times a day to fix flats, it would suck.
Yeah, I imagine. I can only imagine because I'm not an off-road rider, and I've read some blogs and some books and watched a few documentaries about folks that compete in the Dakar, but it seems like just a massive endurance event, especially for people on motorcycles.
Yeah, it's definitely an endurance event for sure. It's one of the things that's different for the bikes versus the cars and the trucks and all that is once the cars and trucks are off the special, it's just kind of a road trip. It's like, okay, take your helmet off. You can get out of your fire suit if you want. You're sitting in a car and it's a long drive, but they're just driving.
Right.
Bike, it's you get off the special and okay, I got to keep riding. You're still in your helmet, you're still in your gear. There is no like, okay, it's done and over with. And anybody that's a motorcycle rider knows they have to have a little heightened sense of awareness on a bike compared to a car. You just can't start daydreaming. So, yeah, the days are much longer on a bike than they are in cars, and the endurance is there. For that aspect, and then just the physical nature of riding a motorcycle.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that you stay in pretty good shape, which a lot of people, I guess, probably don't understand how physically demanding motorcycle racing is, even road racing. I mean, it looks like these guys are just, zipping back and forth on the seat left to right, and how physically demanding could that be? But motorcycle racing is an incredibly physically demanding sport, and once you get off-road, it's even more so, I think. So what do you do to stay in shape, to prep your body for that kind of endurance and punishment on a day-to-day basis?
Right. So I do a lot of cardio type stuff. I do a lot of running. I'm not a runner per se. Like, it's not like, I enjoy going out and running, but it's just a good means to the end. So, and it travels well, which, all I need is a pair of shoes with me and I can do that. So yeah. I do a lot of running. I got into cycling. Some of my neighbors are big cyclists and stuff, and they got me into that about 2 years ago. So I do cycling also. Again, it's funny. I'm not a diehard cyclist. I show up for these group rides because it's great motivation and pushing when you don't want to ride. But I'm the guy that's like in beachwear, shorts, and t-shirt. Everybody else is in their spandex, and they look at me like, what the heck, and they've got the latest, greatest, bikes, and they're all talking about how they're saving weight and all this stuff. And the road bike I have is nice. It was given to me, but it's a 10-year-old bike, and it's efficient, and it's for work, it's for training. So it's like, so what if I've got more drag? I got to work harder. That's good for me.
Right.
So yeah. It's become kind of a joke because I'll go, like I said, we'll jump around at group rides and we'll go someplace that's new, and of course, I get the stares and I walk away, and the ride organizers will come up to my buddies and they'll be like, is he going to be able to hang? And they'll be like, don't worry about him. So the cycling part, I do that. That's fun. It's cool. I've got a row machine, a Concept 2 row machine that I bought years ago. I keep that in my house. That's kind of the winter foul weather stuff. I can do in the house. That's pretty good. Another thing when I get to the gym, I do a lot of work with a racing school out west, and so I spend a lot of time in Utah. And they have a gym membership to a really nice facility, and the machine I love for cardio and workout is the old school Stairmaster.
Really?
And I'll go jump on that thing for 45 minutes to an hour and run at a high level. And it gets the heart and lungs running, and it works your legs real well. Which we use a ton of legs off road, and it's actually good in your core too, just from supporting yourself. So that's some of the stuff I do. Tons of push-ups, pull-ups too. I don't do a lot of weightlifting. Just don't really have the time for it and limited access. And then I try to ride. That's the biggest thing. Doesn't matter how much time you spend in the gym, especially if you're doing weights and machines. Unless you're using the muscles the way they're going to be used, they're never going to be fully trained. So I try to ride on top of that.
But do you have any kind of special dietary practices, especially as you get closer to rally time, when you know your schedule is going to be irregular? Certainly, you might start the same time or roughly the same time every day, but you never know when you're going to get back to the bivouac. So do you try to kind of control your diet, especially leading up to a big event like the rally?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned diet. You talk to most dietitians or just people in general, and they're like, you got the worst diet possible. But it works for me. I'm what I refer to myself as a meatitarian. I survive on protein and hoofs and beaks, and that's kind of what I eat. With a healthy dose of sugar thrown in there, and it works. I don't do a lot of vegetable intake, never have. Always told it's going to come back to bite me, but the healthiest person I know in my group of peers, so it's working so far.
Well, and it's a kind of a personal question, but how old are you now?
I turned 51 just before the start of the Dakar.
Okay, so at 51 years old, it sounds like you eat a ton of meat. You work out regularly and hard, and that works for you. I mean, obviously, everybody's body is a little bit different, but you've gotten this far on what other people would say is a terrible diet, not a lot of variety at any rate. So obviously, you're doing something right. How long did it kind of take you to figure out what works for you? I mean, did you ever, did you try some kind of fad or popular diets when you were younger and just kind of figure that out, that it wasn't working for you from a competitive place?
Not really. I mean, I guess the only thing that I ever really tried was going like low carb and really like knocking out the carbs and stuff like that. And that I realized actually worked for me really well. I mean, I love bread, right? It's just bread and carbs. I mean, most of that stuff's just another form of sugar. It takes longer to get to you. But, if I'm going to do sugar and sweets, I'm going straight for the good stuff. I'm not messing around. And let me tell you, I got a sweet tooth. Anybody that knows me knows that I eat my weight in sugar weekly.
There you go. So basically Twinkies and flank steaks.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm a little bit better than Twinkies. I like to tell myself I'm eating healthy sugar, so it's more like Fig Newtons.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Well,
but it's good old cookies and stuff are where it's at. But yeah, no, as far as the diet thing, I mean, honestly, that is, and it's not the food that I ate, but that, like, when I reflect and looking back, that was the weakest link for me this time around. And it wasn't what I was eating. It was not eating enough. I was just drained at the end of the 2 weeks. I mean, I could feel it about 4 days from the end that I was like, 5 days from the end, I was like, I'm not keeping up with my caloric intake. And it seems like, you think food, you're a little behind, you could just eat a whole bunch and catch up. And no matter how much I would eat, it didn't seem to matter. There was first day we rolled into Argentina, it was when I think it was stage 9. It was either 9 or 10. I can't remember. Whichever was canceled. The first one that got canceled, we rolled into Argentina, and the bivouac was really nice. It was a beautiful facility. It wasn't kind of the dirt fields that we're normally used to. There was some sort of like convention center or something that we were at. And as soon as we rolled up, you could smell the food, the steaks, and all the stuff. I mean, that's what Argentina's known for, right?
Yeah.
So they're putting on the spread at the bivouac, and it was a big media event and open to the public. They were selling, admission to the public and everything because it was in this big city. And anyhow, getting back to the food, so dinner's ready. I go in. I ate 2.5 big steaks, and I had a baked potato and some other stuff, and like everyone's looking at me, and and I'm just like, I need the calories, and I'm just eating, and normally one full big size steak would be more than enough. I ate 2.5, and honestly, if I thought I could stuff more in, I probably would have eaten 2 more. But I was getting to the point where like my stomach won't hold anything. But yeah, the food intake towards the end, I didn't keep up, and it's tough because once you leave in the morning, we're leaving anywhere from 4:30 to 6 in the morning. There's no real time to just pull over and eat and stop.
Right.
So, you get up. You don't want to get up any earlier than you have to because you need as much sleep as you can get. And so you try to eat a big breakfast and stuff, and you pack your pockets with goos and gels and power bars and whatever stuff that you like. And I usually I packed purposely about 2,000 calories in that stuff a day. And sometimes I could eat it all. A lot of times I didn't, just because of time. You're on stage, you don't want to stop.
Right.
And that was one of the things I did later on. I started forcing myself to just stop for a moment, even if it was just enough to pull the bar out and open the wrapper so I could eat it as I'm riding. I was like, I've got to keep replenishing myself. And then you get in late at night and, or just, not necessarily late at night, but you get in, early evening or whatever, and you start eating, and then you go back and you eat one more before you go to bed, and and then you wake up and start all over again.
Yeah.
So.
Well, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Go ahead.
Well, let me tell you something real quick to kind of wrap this up or finish that part up. On the food, we're talking diet and food and all this stuff. I've got a fitness monitor thing that I was given to me by a doctor that I've been working with, called a Whoop. It's pretty neat. And it's got all kinds of really cool things that it monitors and tells you. Well, one of the more basic things is just a calorie counter based on all the biometrics that it's reading. And I was burning between 8,000 and 11,000 calories a day.
Oh my goodness.
So when you see that and you think, oh, how can you just eat more? It's like, it's food you have to eat to consume, 8,000 to 10,000 calories.
I can't even conceptualize that.
I mean, we would come in, we have a recovery drink, and it's you're supposed to eat it as soon as you're done working out. Well, you still had a couple hour liaison, so it wasn't as good as you could, but it's the quickest way to get calories in, and it says 2 scoops, and down that with a glass of water. So that's what we started with. And then you start looking at the calories and like, wait, 2 scoops is only like 300 calories. Next thing you know, it's like 4 scoops, 6 scoops. And you're making this just like thick, because you're trying to get as many calories in as quick as you can. And, where it's still liquid and it was still only 1,000 calories, and so it's like, and that's highly concentrated stuff. And so to think of what you have to eat to get that kind of calories in, so anyway, I think going in the future, that was one thing that the biggest takeaway for me was figure out how to manage my caloric intake better and get more food in me.
Yeah. Excuse me there. So I did want to ask you some questions about your motorcycle, since this is a motorcycle podcast. So let's talk a little bit about the bike that you used for the rally this time around. It was, you mentioned earlier that somebody else prepared the bike for you. Who was that again?
That was Klimchev Racing out of the Czech Republic.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about the basics of the bike, the model, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so the bike was it's the Husqvarna 450 Rally, which is the exact same thing as the KTM 450 Rally.
Okay.
It's just the Husky's got a white frame, and comes with factory white, blue, and yellow graphics versus the KTM is orange with their orange and blue graphics. So virtually identical bikes. They're purpose-built 450 cc's. That's the cc limit for the Dakar. So it's a 450, though I will say it's unlike any 450 you've ever ridden before. It's not as explosive, snappy as a motocross 450 bike, but the torque that it has and the legs that it has, I mean, I don't think you could get on a 450 that'll run as high top speed as one of these things. And they're bulletproof. I mean, it's amazing the abuse that you put on these bikes going through the dunes. So strong 450. So that's the basis there. The chassis is a trellis frame chassis, which is pretty cool. You know, that means it's a bunch of bars all welded together. It doesn't have, you know, like big aluminum spars or anything like that you think of a more modern motocross chassis. Part of that is for flex and stability for high speeds. They just flex a little more and absorb things a little bit better, which leads to stability. And then the biggest thing next on it is fuel tanks. It's a tanker. With the long distances that we travel, you have to carry a lot of fuel. The bike carries roughly 8.5 gallons. I think it was 38 liters or so. So it's somewhere, I think that's about 8 gallons. Somewhere in that range. I don't quite remember anymore, but you fill the bikes up with fuel, and let me tell you, you know it when they're full.
Yeah, I bet.
And feel it until they're once you burn down to the last third of the bike, half tank, you start feeling like, okay, this is pretty good, but they're heavy, and you can feel it. They do a good job designing the bikes with the tanks as far as trying to keep the fuel from being all in one location or keep it from being high. There's a rear tank. The whole subframe's a tank in the back that held 16 liters. And then the two front tanks, which are kind of the side pods and down low by the skid plate, those hold each, I think those are each 10 liters apiece. And you can switch between the front tank and the rear tank, and you burn those down. And then the other notable feature on the bike is going to be the nav tower. And the nav tower has got your electronics on it. It's got your road book holder, which is the scrolling paper map. That's how we navigate through it. We have two digital readouts that are tied into the GPS computer that is on the motorcycle. The GPS computer that's on the motorcycle, though, isn't like a GPS that an adventure rider, a tourist, would have, or somebody that would use in their car. It's not program a map and away you go. It's just pulling data in and numbers, and it gives us numbers that the organization is allowing. So it gives us compass heading, it gives us mileage or kilometers. And then we use repeaters, and the repeaters off of that are what we have above the road book, and that's what we're looking at because we're trying to keep our eyes up, looking down the course, not straight down at the handlebars.
Sure.
So you have that you use that in conjunction with the road book to navigate where you're going. And then there's another, and then I also had an ICO as a backup odometer that's on the motorcycle also, and that's a mechanical reads off of the front wheel. So that's a mechanical backup to the computer system. And then there's one other electronic device. It's called an ear track. It comes from actually in the marine world, stuff they use on boats and all that, but this is a much smaller unit. It has got GPS tracking. It's got a satellite phone in it. A lot of neat stuff. It's got accelerometers in it, so if the bike falls over, or it, more importantly, not so much falls over, if it takes an impact, and I don't know what the thresholds are, but higher than a certain level, it will register and it'll flag an alert on the monitoring crew back in France. So they know when you stopped. They know if you just kind of rolled to a stop. They know if you've wrecked and had a big impact, and they can monitor and watch all that stuff. So pretty cool. That's kind of the bike. A big overgrown dirt bike with lots of fuel and extra navigation gear.
And since you had a crew prepping the bike for you, in another country, on another continent, maybe. Well, no, Europe is on another continent. There's no maybe to it. How did you interact with them to get the bike kind of tweaked to your preferences?
So most of my interaction went through a good friend of mine, Angelo Volchik, who lives in Charleston, South Carolina. He's the one that kind of helped put this program together for me, and he's the one that made this opportunity happen. So Angelo, you can probably tell by his last name, Volchik. He is Czech. He's good friends with Andrej Kunchev, the owner of the team. Andrej is also a racer besides owner, and Andrej wanted to get into doing support, not just for himself and Angelo, the immediate racers, but it wanted to kind of expand a little bit, and so he was talking about doing more stuff and expanding. Angelo put the deal together and said, hey, I've got a friend of mine. He's the one that helped, and I took Angelo to his first rally, the Baja Rally back in 2013. He's like, he was instrumental in helping me get started. He went to the Dakar in 2012, didn't have the result he was looking for, kind of sad the way things went. He'd love to be able to come back, but he can't pay retail for a full support program and all that stuff. And so through that, the program came together, and Andrej was like, this would be good to help me establish my support business. So that's how I got in there. And then so through that, most of my communication went through Angelo and the team. So I talked to Angelo and everything, and then he would communicate everything to the team. As far as the bikes and everything, getting it the way you want, I mean, there's only so much that you're really going to do with these bikes. The suspension, we had the best stuff you could get. I mean, honestly, it was probably better than my skill level. We had the factory cone valve suspension on the bike, Trax fork on the back with the factory settings and whatnot. Andrej is kind of a backdoor satellite team for a satellite rider for KTM, so they help him quite a bit, and he was able to accumulate a lot of parts the previous year through that support. And so I used a lot of his stuff from the previous year. I rode his bike that he rode the year before, and his suspension, though it was all sent back and redone and prepped. So yeah, Angelo communicated everything, and they took care of everything. And then when I got there, we went and first day we got the bikes off the boat, and they brought it to the bivouac and kind of jumped on the bike. We made very few adjustments. I don't even think we moved the handlebars. I think I changed the angle of the levers slightly, and
off you go.
The biggest change I made, and they were like, really? And they kept looking at it, is the brake lever. So I like the brake lever really low. I like a long travel on it. The rear brake, I use it a lot as far as a control factor, and I want it to be very deliberate and purposeful when I use it, and I want the finesse of just slightly touching it versus lock up. With motocross boots and the lever being high, I mean, man, you barely touch those things and they lock up, and I don't like that. So we'd adjust it, and it's not a convenient that on the rally bikes, that's the one thing that is not easy to adjust. You have to take a bunch of stuff apart to get to it.
Of course you do.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like most dirt bikes and it's right there, and it's like, oh, take this and turn this eccentric and adjust the rod. It's like, no, take the skid plate off. You have to drop the master cylinder, the master cylinder, the brake lever component, all that stuff. But make your adjustment, put it all back up, bolt it onto where the peg is, see if it's right. So we did that a little bit. I got that adjusted, and then, basically off we went. We rode down south about an hour out of the city, and we rode. And it was kind of funny getting on the bike, climbing a couple dunes. I'd start going, and then I'd freaking stock. I'd get stuck. I'm like, down, and it was just I wasn't used to that bike. Angelo let me ride his bike. Angelo's got a 450 rally bike here in the States, and I took it out west. I spent 3 weeks out west with it, doing some riding and training, and that was great. But just jumping on this bike, I was like, okay, I want to take it easy. And then I saw Andres. He's like, let me show you. He's like, brr. And I'm like, all right, if he's going to flog it and bounce it off the rev limiter, so am I. And then I came back, and Angelo and Andres were like, that's how you got to ride that thing. I'm like, it'll take it, and like all day long.
All day long.
And so I was like, all right, I'm not gonna try to be ginger with it. And that was it. The bike was great. I think the first couple days were in the dunes, and suspension isn't super critical in the dunes. It either absorbs big drops or it doesn't, and it can't be too mushy. Otherwise it's constantly transferring weight to the nose. So it was fine there. Once we got out of the big dunes and we did a little bit of rocky roads and stuff like that. I made some adjustments. It was a little too harsh in some of the chop, so we just made some adjustments, turning clickers, and it was better there. But other than that, it was great. I mean, my only complaint on the bike was the handguards. I freaking hated the things that they put on them because they didn't do squat for them. I'm like, these things suck. And that was it.
Well, that does seem like a pretty minor thing to have as your one big complaint with the bike.
Well, it is, except for when you drop the bike and it breaks a lever.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I dropped the bike, and the handguard just collapsed, and the lever freaking tip. It was just a tip, but it broke off, and I'm just like, these handguards are pointless. I mean, they're I don't use, well, especially in a rally. In a rally, the handguards aren't for guarding your hands. You're not in, every once in a while we're in vegetation whacking, a cactus here or there, and they're nice, but it's not like woods racing where you're actually using them to protect your hands. These things are to protect the levers. They're control guards is what I look at them. And the particular brand, the brand makes good products except for their handguards. I've never been a fan of their handguards.
Gotcha.
And that's the one thing that I would have swapped out in a heartbeat. And it's funny, Gabby was a girl on the team also, and Gabby, the very first day that we rode, she had mentioned about how she breaks a ton of levers. She's like, oh, I drop my bike all the time. I break so many levers. And I'm like, what? And then the first time that it happened to me, I was like, because of these crappy handguards. I told her, I'm like, change the handguards. Here's the brand you want. You'll never break a lever again. And so hopefully she'll do it. She'll save herself a lot of money in levers.
There you go.
Yeah, that was my only complaint on the bike, and it was a small one.
Yeah, that works pretty well. So I'm sure that you've gotten this question before, but now I want to know: are you going to do it again?
I don't know. I would I mean, it's not a matter of not wanting to. I would absolutely love to. I went the first time and failed to finish. I went this time and I finished. I don't, finishing was the main focus and the main goal. And I definitely had to stay focused on that. I had a pretty gnarly wreck on day 2, and it affected me for the rest of the race for sure. And I'm still dealing with a couple issues from it. So I didn't necessarily have the competitive finish that I'd like to have. And, kind of being a racer, it's like, man, I know I can do better.
Right.
So with that, it's like, yeah, I want to go back, and I know I can do better. I know I can have a stronger finish if I can, there's a big if with that, and that is if I can keep myself 100%, or as close to it without any major wrecks or setbacks. So that side of me absolutely would love to go do it, want to do it. But it's such a huge financial commitment, The team's asked me already, do you think you want to do it next year? And I'm like, sure, I want to do it. It's just a matter of coming up with the money. I mean, it's, like the first time, I put a ton of money in. I put a ton of my own money. I was able to raise money from sponsors, from people buying T-shirts, to a good friend of mine. I didn't even know it at the time, started a GoFundMe page. And next thing you know, I'm being presented with some money from lots of supporters, which if they're listening, I've got to say thank you very much to everybody that supported, whether it was a GoFundMe or bought t-shirts. Thank you guys and gals. But it's such an expensive endeavor. So unless I could secure, proper funding, that'd be the biggest hang up keeping me from going.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that makes sense. And that's, any kind of big undertaking like that, the finances are always going to be a big concern.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. I mean, it is for anybody.
Well, so I just want to ask you a couple more things, and then I'll let you get on with your day. What kind of stuff do you do to stay, when you're not training, when you're not working out, when you're not riding bicycles in your beach shorts and flip-flops with your friends? What do you...
hold on. I got to say, it's not flip-flops. I did break down, and actually, I can't say I bought a pair of shoes. A friend of mine that's an old cyclist, he did give me a pair of proper shoes. But yes, I am wearing the shorts and the baggy shirt and all that stuff. No flip-flops.
Okay, well,
in the hood.
Thank you for correcting me on that. What kind of stuff do you do to stay busy and stay active? And I mean, you've got this wealth of experience riding motorcycles. Do you have classes? Do you impart that knowledge onto people like a good number of really high profile riders do?
Yeah. So that's my background and is instructing. I mean, I after college, I wanted to get involved in racing, and so I pursued a path to go racing. Didn't quite get where I wanted to or had dreamed of getting to and hoped to get to as far as professional car racing. But it led me into a path that didn't really know much about, but I really like, and that's instructing. And so I've been basically a full-time instructor since graduating from college. I've worked with all different racing schools throughout the country in the car side, and then as I started becoming more and more involved in motorcycles and started motorcycle racing, I started working with a road racing school. Then I was working with BMW for 11 years. I think it was 11 years there. And I helped start their training program, helped develop a lot of the programs in the facility that they use in South Carolina. And I left there in 2013, and now I've got my own business. I don't do a lot of training events, but I do some select events throughout the year. And so, yeah, I do those, and I've got two coming up. One is in Kansas, just south of Kansas City. The dealer Engel Motors is kind of helping put that together, but it's open to all bikes and everybody there. And then I've got one I'm doing through the Grand Rapids dealership, Grand Rapids, Michigan, BMW dealer up there. And that's in June. That's the weekend of the 10th, I believe.
Okay.
And then also, those of you that are familiar with Max BMW, we do the Max Performance School up there. I've been the trainer, and I do those programs with them. So we usually do 2 or 3 dates a year up there also. So we haven't announced those dates yet, but we've got those. So yeah, so I'm doing that stuff where I'm teaching big bike stuff, adventure riding type classes, and then I still do a lot of car stuff. I work with the Ford Racing School out in Utah. I think I mentioned doing school out there, so I do a lot of work with those guys out there, and I do a lot of work with military and government agencies. So a lot of the alphabet soup organizations do a lot of training with those guys.
Yeah.
So keeps me busy.
Do you have a website where people can find out about your upcoming training sessions and stuff like that?
I'm not the most tech guy there is. I don't actually have a website. I need to find somebody that's a techie that can help me out with this stuff. No, but I do have a Facebook page, just BC Moto Adventures on Facebook. They can go there, and I'll post up the events and stuff that we're having there.
Okay.
And whatnot. So that'd be the easiest place to go.
Yeah. And what about your, now when you were in the run up to your Dakar run, I was unemployed most of last year, so I didn't have a lot of money that I could contribute, but I bought some stickers to help out as much as I could. Do you have leftover merch that people can go buy, T-shirts and stickers and stuff like that?
Not really. The T-shirts, we kind of, because we did what I'd like to think such a high quality shirt, and they weren't cheap. I didn't go out and build or have a whole bunch done and sitting on inventory. Basically, they were done to order. So we would run, and about once a week, we'd run a production and get them done. So I don't have any of those left over. And I've got a few stickers left here or there. If somebody really wanted to buy a sticker or something, they could shoot me a message or something on Facebook.
All right. Well,
Bill Conger,
we'll let them.
Moto Adventures.
I actually talked right in the middle of that, so say it again so everybody can hear it without me interrupting.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying, if they want some stickers, they could message me or something from BC Moto Adventures or just Bill Conger on Facebook.
Sounds good. Well, listen, Bill, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today and to be on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. It was fun, and hopefully I didn't babble too much.
No, not at all. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Sounds good.
Because this podcast is produced by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America, in every episode I highlight one benefit of being a member. I admit it's an enticement to get you to visit our website and get you to join for at least 1 year. I've been a member since 1999 and have used the member benefits to my advantage countless times since then, especially the Roadside Assistance Program. But that's not what I'm going to tell you about today. Today it's all about the MOA getaways. The getaways are like mini rallies. There are 11 of them spread across the U.S. from March through November. The series of getaways has already started. Obviously, they started in March, and they run from now through November, with the last one of the year in Kerrville, Texas. Chances are good that one of the getaways is within striking distance of you, and what's better is you don't even have to be an MOA member to attend. Point your web browser to bmwmoa.org and click on Events in the menu bar to get all the info you might need about the entire getaway series. Before I sign off for this episode, I want to remind you to check out our website at horizon.bmwmoa.org. You can get all the links for this and every other episode going back to the very first one. You can also sign up for the email newsletter at tinyletter.com/chasingthehorizon. The podcast is on Facebook and Twitter, and a couple weeks ago now, I created an Instagram account. Obviously, it's time to update my script. I posted to it once, but I likely won't post again or much until summer. Drop me an email at podcast@bmwmoa.org if you have any suggestions for guests you'd like to hear from on the show in the second season. Thank you for coming back for the 22nd episode of Chasing the Horizon, which featured a discussion with Dakar Rally competitor Bill Conger. Our next episode will feature a discussion with Dr. Mark Barnes, a motorcycle riding psychologist who happens to write for Motorcycle Consumer News. That episode will be out on May 21st. Andrew Finberg composed and recorded our theme music. Karen Halker designed our logo. Thanks again to all our guests and listeners for giving us their time. We'll see you out there somewhere on the road, or off it. Ride safe.